Okay, this is a reaction video. This is from Passport 2. This is how watching the news in Germany is completely different than in America. Well, let's see what this is all about. Please click like, share, and subscribe for Passport 2 as well as for me as well. Let's see what's going on here.
When you turn on the TV in Germany at 8 p.m., you will notice peculiar events as you flip through the channels. When I first saw this, I felt like I was in a dystopian world where you only had one source of information that everybody followed. But as I watched and listened, I realized the news in Germany is nothing like I had ever experienced in the US before. And it made me question, is this a better way?
Germans are generally more efficient than the United States and things like that. So I guess you could possibly say that it maybe it is better.
Hey guys, and welcome back to our channel. I am Donnie, and along with my wife Aubrey, we are two Americans currently living in Germany with our baby, sharing all of our experiences living and traveling throughout Europe. The US is coming up on a presidential election cycle in 2024, and things have already been heating up in the media.
Yeah, it's going to be Joe Biden, the current president, and really not a very good president in my opinion, just my opinion, against Donald Trump. And Donald Trump may be the second president from Grover Cleveland would be the first to serve a 4-year term, then lose, and then regain it after 4 years of another president. So we'll see how that pans out.
As we've talked with family back in the States, and as we've observed this process from a distance while we live in Germany, we've really started to notice more and more differences in how the news in the US and the news in Germany reports on these events. Of course, it's not just limited to politics though. In general, how the news is reported, how people respond to it, and where people put their trust is different between Germany and the US. And that's exactly what I'm going to talk about today.
Well, it's interesting. I don't know what it's like in Germany, but in the United States, the press is predominantly left-wing. They are definitely left-wing leaning. Now, back when I was growing up, it was kind of in the middle. Okay, they had a left-wing lean slight, but it wasn't as overt as it is nowadays, where it's completely to the left of politics, with the exception of Fox News, which is a right-wing leaning group. But that's how it's done in the United States now.
Today in my video, extra, is the news in America being a little extra? In both the US and Germany, you have various sources of news at different levels and using different mediums to distribute information. In this video, I want to focus on the national mass television medias in either country. So who am I talking about? Well, in the US, the big three national news sources are CNN at third place, MSNBC in second place, and far ahead of the pack as the leader of news in the US is Fox News. In Germany, the largest national news sources...
Yeah, Fox News in the United States is predominantly right-wing. MSNBC and CNN are completely left-wing. Fox, they say they're, well, regardless of what they say, they are a right-wing leaning channel, but they do have some left-wing commentators on there. Okay, it's not completely right-wing, but it's predominantly right-wing. MSNBC and CNN really don't have any right-wing commentators on their programs at all. They are completely sold to the left.
Are RTL Aktuell, Heute Nachrichten von ZDF, and by far the most watched news source is the Tagesschau from ARD. And the Tagesschau is exactly what I was talking about at the beginning of the video, that I initially perceived as almost a dystopian single source of information when I first moved to Germany, and before I understood what it was. So, what is it? And why did I have this perception as an American the first time I saw it? So the Tagesschau would translate roughly to day's show or review of the day. And every evening at 8 p.m. for 15 minutes, 10.13 million people in Germany tune into the Tagesschau. However, what channel do you tune into to watch the Tagesschau, you might ask? Well, it almost doesn't matter, because you flip through the channels and there it is, and there it is, and there it is, and there it is, and there it is. The Tagesschau is a publicly funded news station from the German Public Service Network, ARD, the shortened name for
Arbeitsgemeinschaft der öffentlich-rechtlichen Rundfunkanstalten in der Bundesrepublik Deutschland.
Good Lord. You need, that is a huge name.
Yeah, that's the German language for you. The main Tagesschau program is aired on the channel Das Erste, but simultaneously aired on ARD-affiliated networks like NDR, RBB, SWR, WDR, HR, Dreisat, etc., which are all regional parts of this publicly funded broadcasting network. This publicly funded television and radio system in Germany was established after World War II when the Allies divided up Germany into different broadcasting regions.
That's interesting because, after World War II, the Allies had a lot of control over Germany, and of course, TV really wasn't a big thing after World War II. It didn't become big into the 50s.
Those were later merged, and then they further based the broadcasting system roughly off the BBC in the UK, so that it was completely separate from any government influence or funding to ensure a propaganda arm of the government could never again have control over the flow of information to the masses like what happened under the Nazi regime. Thus, we eventually got the Tagesschau, the main source of news information in Germany, and why it airs on so many publicly funded channels at the same time. In fact, this source of information is so important for the German people that German primetime television does not start until after the Tagesschau at the bizarre time of 8:15. Actually, private TV.
That is interesting. That you turn on your shows now in the United States nowadays. Most newscasts don't garner the ratings that they used to because of you have Fox News. You just watch it there. You just watch it there at 6 o'clock. Also, a lot of people stream nowadays, so you really don't see a lot of that stuff.
TV network Sat.1 once tried to break the Tagesschau stronghold and influence on television by starting their primetime at 8 p.m., but it failed miserably, and even though they aren't part of the public broadcasting system, they were inevitably forced to push primetime back to 8:15 because they just couldn't compete with the Tagesschau. In Germany, publicly funded TV is the main form of television and is funded by, the public through a broadcast contribution that nearly every household in Germany must pay. The exceptions to
That is interesting that you pay for your own programming. That's something that is different in the United States. Now, granted, you pay for cable in the United States, but you don't pay for TV like that. It just doesn't work like that.
Who has to pay the current €18.36 per month per household contribution is very strict and mostly applies to those with low income on welfare or have serious health issues that hinder them from actually being able to use these services. The great irony, though, of the German versus American television system is that the Americans help set up, build, and structure the German system, yet the American system looks nothing like what Germany has today. Now, let's compare all of this to the American system. First, when I say publicly funded news or public broadcasting in general, Americans immediately generally think of TV pledge drives asking for money on the one single publicly funded TV station in the US, PBS. However,
yeah, PBS is the one is where they go on there and they will basically put on like a telethon and actually have people that's how they raise their money for their shows and things like that. But it's something that most people, unless you're watching it, don't really know if it's on. Don't have to watch it. Don't have to just contribute at all.
PBS is not purely publicly funded, and it does receive some federal government funding and sometimes state government funding, but data from 2018 shows it was at a cost of less than $3 per person per year in terms of tax dollars going towards it. Instead, our public broadcasting has well-known telethons and pledge drives to raise funds from private donations from citizens or private foundations or companies, and they also get funding from member stations' dues or other sources. Otherwise,
yeah, because sometimes you'll see, like on PBS, they'll have like a public funding was first by they'll show a company that funded the program that you're watching, but it's not necessarily you giving money for that for that show.
Television news generally will come from private companies that are financed through advertisements or subscription services, for example, that are all competing for your attention at all hours of the day and night. Since the news channels all have their own shows, you don't have the same experience of flipping through the channels and seeing the same face reporting the news over and over again at one time in the evening like I experienced in Germany. In a way, one thing that this made me feel was that I had a lot of different options and perspectives that I could watch and piece together what the common thread of truth was from the different ways a story was reported by the various channels. That's why when I saw the Tagesschau simultaneously being aired on different channels and based on all of my perspectives that all news sources have a bias, I thought it looked like Germans were being fed one singular point of view rather than a plethora so they could get multiple angles on a single story from. Now, I'm not saying that the Tagesschau is 100% without bias. I don't believe that's possible. However, what I wasn't taking into consideration at first was a very important difference in the two forms of media, and that is how the news is reported.
Yeah, because like I said, he showed Fox, CNN, and MSNBC. MSNBC and CNN are completely left-wing. They are completely liberal. They are 100% on the left of the political scale. Fox is more on the right. Okay, and you can, MSNBC and CNN, as you switch between them, will have different programs, different things, but predominantly from the left.
To show the difference, just watch these two short clips of the most watched news sources in either country.
Argentinien steht nach der Wahl des Rechtspopulisten Milei zum neuen Präsidenten vor einem historischen Regierungswechsel.
This is a Fox News Alert. Celebrations across Argentina as the Libertarian candidate Javier Milei secures the presidency in yesterday's election.
One of my favorite quotes I've seen to describe the Tagesschau that highlights the main differences between it and American news media is that the news is delivered by news readers, not news personalities. Because of the structure of American news and media, all of the private television channels must compete for your attention, which leads to them becoming more and more entertainers rather than informers. Now again, this is also not to say that things are always so dry and purely informative in Germany.
Einfach sagen. Und deswegen mache ich jetzt hier diesen Tisch mal kaputt, ja? Damit du mal genau Bescheid weißt.
Now, the Tagesschau
That's a little bit extreme. Bringing out an axe and chopping up a table.
in Germany isn't
You don't see that in the United States.
technically without competition, and it's also not that private news stations don't exist in Germany that can get a little more similar to American news styles, but Germans just don't value that kind of news and information. The Tagesschau has a 34% share of the audience, nearly bettering the combined audience share of all the American networks, PBS, and cable newscasts combined.
Of course, nowadays, and the reason because most people are streaming nowadays. Most people stream whatever they watch. I mean, Fox has a streaming network. CNN has it used to have a streaming network, but I think it got canceled. But most people stream things, and most people in the United States don't pay much attention to the news. So that if watching TV and streaming is not that big in Germany, which I don't know if it is or isn't, you're going to get a much bigger share in Germany than you are in the United States, just because most people are streaming.
And a lot of that is due to the way that it is presented. Besides news is delivered, there is also a difference in what kind of news is reported on between the top news sources in Germany and the US. For example, in the Tagesschau, you don't find any tabloid news, no soft news, but relevant stories about politics, economics, culture, and less sport. But they also are trying to fit the most important stories in a 15-minute time frame, so they generally focus on the big important stuff.
Yeah, if you only have 15 minutes, you're going to, I mean, in the United States, you have hour-long programs, you have hour-long news, so you can fill in with fluff and sports and weather and that stuff. But if you only have 15 minutes, you're only going to stick with the top stories. That's just how it's going to work.
Well, they do have time to fit in other less important stuff from time to time.
Das Jugendwort 2023 steht fest und es ist Goofy.
Now, later in the evening, you do have the Tagesthemen, in which ARD is able to take topics from the 15-minute Tagesschau and discuss them in more detail in a longer formatted show. But that's unlike on, say, Fox News or MSNBC, where you have an entire channel dedicated to reporting news 24/7 and will cover maybe slightly less important but more entertaining stories at times as well to get your attention.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. Shrinkflation now apparently coming for our Oreos.
But one of the main differences I've noticed in the news is reflected in something that Nathaniel Drew said in one of his videos about the differences in living in the US versus Europe.
Here in Europe, there's a steady stream of news coming from the US, but when I'm over there, it feels like there isn't much talk about what's going on in the rest of the world unless something really big happens, like a war. Most mainstream media barely covers what's going on internationally, and unless you're a worldly American, and there definitely are some of those out there, you don't have very much of an idea of what's going on out there.
Yeah, a lot of...
Now, it depends on what you watch, because if you, there is news from around the world, but it's in very small increments. Like Fox News on Bret Baier from 6 to 7 o'clock will occasionally have like a 30-minute, 2-minute blurb about things going on around the rest of the world, but that's really it.
Times in the US, you can get the sense that the US is the center of the universe, and you can forget that stuff is going on in other parts of the world because American media just doesn't cover as much international issues as they do American issues. To be fair, there are factors that play here, like the sheer size of the US always giving material to news agencies, plus the importance that the US plays on the world stage is simply different from countries that are much smaller and have much less influence on the world politics. Because of the way that these news sources are funded and the nature of polarizing politics in the US, you also don't typically have the issue of news stations being associated with political parties in Germany like you have in the US. In the US, the idea is generally, if you are a Republican, you turn on Fox News, and if you're a Democrat, you tune into basically any other news source. Or,
like I said before, Fox is probably the big Republican. And you really don't have anything else. I mean, if you're a liberal Democrat, you're going to watch, MSNBC and CNN, but actually you'll probably watch Fox News too.
more specifically, we could say CNN or MSNBC, for example. In Germany, you have a very interesting different situation. Those on the left and the right do not differ in regard to the media source they turn to most for news. Both those on the ideological right and left cite ARD as their main news source. Yes, there are other minor news outlets that may lean one way or another politically that Germans could seek out if they wanted, but for overall information, the choice is generally clear for those across the German political spectrum. This polarization in the US politically and seemingly lack of polarization in Germany also produces an interesting result in trust in the media in both countries. So we've talked a lot
because a lot of Americans don't trust the news anymore. They really just don't. And that's probably because of each station picking a side for all intents and purposes. It's one of the things that is what it is. And when things are going bad for Biden and the newscast is trying to say, no, it's really pretty good. It's actually it really turns off the populace, and that's why most Americans don't trust the news, don't watch the news in the United States very much anymore.
About who Germans and Americans watch if they watch mass media, but are these the most trusted news sources in Germany and the US? For Germany, it should seem obvious. Even though both the left and right-leaning individuals in Germany both watch ARD the most for their news, 8 in 10 Germans say they trust ARD with their news, whereas in the US, 61% of Democrats say they distrust the largest national news source, Fox News, while 65% of Republicans say they do trust Fox News. Now, I mentioned that in this video I wanted to focus on the top national news sources in each country to compare, but I do want to point out that overall, more Americans have no trust at all in mass media than those that do have trust in.
So what I just said. Okay, most people do not pay attention to the news because they don't trust the news, and that's just how it is. Because of the if Fox were to all say we're going to take down the middle, we are going to be down the middle. We are going to not be left. We're not going to be right. We're just going to be down the middle. would that turn? I don't know. I mean, I don't know if people would believe it because they certainly do not trust MSNBC or CNN. Okay, those have the lowest viewership. Those people are completely lost as far as I'm concerned. I don't necessarily agree with everything on Fox, but I do enjoy Fox to a certain extent. I enjoy it more than CNN and MSNBC. That's for sure.
Mass media regardless of political leanings. But 83% of Americans do trust local news stations, which are often much less political and dramatic than national.
Yeah, the local news is generally pretty good in the United States. The local news doesn't pick a side, doesn't get involved, and usually is pretty good.
News. Of course, I can't cover all of the differences between the mass media outlets in the US and Germany in one single video, and this video also still fails to mention local news, social media, independent news, or even newspapers and radio. Therefore, be sure to let me know other differences you know of in the comments below. To see who made it this far into the video, the random question of the week is... how do you feel about the app rentable scooters in cities? Do we like to use them or no? Thanks so much for watching this video.
Yeah, they're not bad. I don't use them, but they're not bad. But hey, this is Passport 2. How watching the news in Germany is completely different than in America. Please click like, share, and subscribe for them, and like, share, and subscribe for me as well. Thanks for watching. Have a good rest of your day.